in the pre-pandemic situation, business continuity architecture was planned only by the large organizations because, it's very complex to deploy and stuff like that, right? But this continuity has to be planned by everyone. That's one of the, I think, the biggest learnings of the pandemic. So when we look at the small manufacturers which is what the topic of the panel discussion is today, I would look at it at two parts. Number one, shop floor level, where the actual manufacturing is what we are doing. Second is the non-shop floor level. I am not an expert on shop floor level, so whatever inputs I will share would be pretty much on the non-shop floor level operations of the manufacturer. But mind you, even at the shop floor level, things like robotics, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, and edge computing will play a big part. But I am not going to delve into those things at all because that is out of my scope. I am no expert on that. Now let us look at what it is required to run the operations. First and foremost, if this situation, first of all, let us be clear that situation is not yet disappeared. It is still there, right? But we can also have bigger disruptions coming in future, similar disruptions. So what is required for small manufacturers? I think the most important part is collaboration. You need to be in touch with your complete team. Because if you are not going to be in touch with your complete team, work will not happen. Let's be clear about that. So when you're talking of being in touch and collaboration would include talking on regular basis, meeting people on regular basis, working on documents together, emailing, the complete suite. I'm not just talking of WhatsApp chats. That's just one small part of collaboration, but collaboration is a much bigger chapter. Experts have said today's worker, 80% of the work is collaboration oriented. So if you do not have tools for proper collaboration, work will not happen. Let's be clear about that part. So first and foremost, collaboration is most important. Next, data center transformation. What do we mean by data center transformation? Here we'll talk of the core infrastructure, the core applications like ERP, we are talking of payroll, HRMS, those kind of things, because those have to continue if your operations have to continue. Okay. And we'll also be talking of things like, backups, disaster recovery, because all these are all part of data center. Final piece would be security. One thing which pandemic has taught us is that in situations like this, there's a huge segment out there who's out, which is a cyber, who are like cyber threats, because they are really taking undue advantage of the digital presence of people. So security becomes very important both for the collaboration as well as for the data center transformation, both. So we need an architecture where people should be able to work from anywhere, on any device. And for this to happen, the only possibility is cloud computing, because that's the way to go, especially for small businesses. Small businesses have no other option but to look at cloud computing for business continuity. That's my take. I will talk about resources, because the minute you say a small person, small business, why is the person small? Because resources are limited. What are the resources we are talking about? Resources can be people, resources can be money, resources can be time. So let us look at each of these three buckets, right? Let's look at people. Small manufacturers do not have the luxury of a well-staffed IT department. They don't, because it's typically, they can't afford to have these people with them. So they can't have this team managing the network and, the complex architecture of hardware, software, firewalls, all those things. So when they go for the cloud, what happens is all this heavy duty stuff is managed by the cloud provider, because you don't really have to manage that core infrastructure in terms of hardware and network and firewall XYZ. So that is, I think, a huge benefit for a small manufacturer. So I spoke of people. Now show me the money. Second part is the money part, right? When you look at a typical on-premise infrastructure, supposing you are planning a new project, a small manufacturer has to do a lot of calculations because that initial cost is so high. You have to plan for multiple servers, you have to plan for multiple operating systems, application software, the works, implementation. And then also an important part is trying to figure out the right size. Okay, if I'm investing today, will this work for next 5 years? So if I'm investing in this infrastructure today, this infra should be suitable even after 5 years. So, you are literally planning for 5 years in advance. With cloud, what happens? All this CapEx, the capital expenditure, gets converted into operational expenditure, which means today you are starting your operations. You are, starting with only a couple of users going to be using the system. So you'll have a couple of small virtual machines on the cloud, which is probably going to cost you 5,000, 10,000 in the first month. As you keep on growing the cloud infrastructure, and you are paying every month. So instead of paying maybe 20 lakhs infrastructure on day one, or before day one rather, you are slowly scaling up your investments every month. So the minute you convert capital expenditure to operational expenditure, the whole ballgame changes tremendously, right? So that was second huge area which I think is very, very relevant to the small manufacturers. Third is the time. Now, in the on-prem world, whenever you are executing a new project, the whole process of getting the infrastructure, getting the planning for it, all that takes a huge amount of time, You have to set up a payroll system and a manufacturing system. You have to do sizing. That kind of stuff takes us so much time in getting the equipment and trying to follow up with the various vendors, etc., etc. Whereas with cloud, if I have to set up the initial infrastructure, I can do it in a couple of hours. So I think the third important area within the resources would be time. So these are three resource-oriented benefits. Other part is, of course, business continuity and disaster recovery. Without cloud, it is next to impossible for a small manufacturer to have business continuity and disaster recovery. It's just not possible. But with cloud, at a very nominal cost per month, a small manufacturer can invest in business continuity and disaster recovery solution. So that's pretty much my take around this benefits for a small manufacturer. Huge. It's just too huge for them. I'll go back to my previous answer. Cloud changes everything, right? And the low-hanging fruit is obviously email. So typically people start with email generally because that is the easiest to push it to the cloud. After that, it's really your imagination, what you want to really achieve. I'll give you an example because in last almost 21, 22 months since pandemic, the kind of digital transformation which we are seeing from our customers, the kind of requests which are coming from the customers is in multiple areas. So let me give you an example of a manufacturer, about 100 people, having a couple of offices, having multiple factories. So their typical infrastructure, which we were managing in the earlier days, used to be there was a mail server, there was a ERP server, there was a identity Active Directory server, there was a firewall, there was antivirus, and there were all payroll system. So they had for 100 people company also, their data center was reasonably complex. All these things were running with them. Before pandemic itself, they moved their email to the cloud. So no problems. Everything that had gone about 4 years back, and they were very happy with the cloud. Then the pandemic came in, and March 20th, around that time, the pandemic, the lockdowns, etc. started. In the first week of April itself, we did a session for them. We said, now that people are going to work from home, you need to have a platform where you can collaborate. Simple, very simple. So we gave them a complete workshop about how, by using one single system, you can do everything. So collaboration was a big area for them. So when I say big area for them, it also means it's a big area for a typical manufacturer, really. And incidentally, just before the pandemic, they also moved their ERP to the cloud. Okay, so ERP also went to the cloud. So the 2 servers which they were managing internally, 2 or 3 servers, that went to the cloud. That went just before the pandemic. So you now have email, now you have ERP. Immediately post-pandemic, you have the collaboration which moved totally. Then when things became a little better, and then, then the managing director, he spoke to me, he said, I have a problem. Now I want to ensure that since people are now working from anywhere and everywhere, literally, they should be working only from designated computers, and we don't want anybody to come into the system. We want only the designated computers to be used for corporate data and stuff like that. We don't want them to be, using pen drives for removing the data, data leakage. So data leakage was another big area. So now what is happening? Now security is coming in. So we said that security, when your structure is so complex that people are working from everywhere, there are multiple, they are no longer working from 1 or 2 locations, they are working from multiple locations. Security has to be cloud-based. So we moved the identity. You had that identity server, Active Directory server, which was in the office. We moved the complete identity to the cloud. So now all these 100 people are now authenticating themselves using the cloud identity. And once they get authenticated, once the device is getting authenticated, only then they are getting access to the various system resources. Then obviously there came the question about moving documents. So we moved their file server. They had multiple file servers. They had a couple of terabytes of, we moved everything to the cloud. So document management system came into picture. So now what we have seen ERP move, we have seen identity move, we have seen complete management of devices moving to the cloud, security moving to the cloud, and the final piece which was pending was CRM. So now we are doing that also. So, it's like, and interestingly, just about 2 months back, they have a division where they do a lot of design work, CAD, AutoCAD and that kind of stuff they do. So they finalized a vendor who was based out of the country. Vendor said, listen, you need to set up a proper Windows server where my licensing information will be there. And then all the users will then authenticate there and get the work done. He said, but we don't have a data center. He said, no, it's a necessity. So then he called me, he said, what to do? I said, don't worry. You tell him that I'm going to give a data center, I'm going to give you a Windows server on the cloud. Believe me, that vendor told him that, no, it's not possible. I said, let's do a POC. So we set up a licensing server on the cloud because we were very clear, we are not going to have this infrastructure on premise. Simple. And now even that application is moved. So we have multiple applications running on the cloud. Almost everything is on the cloud. Almost everything. I don't think there's, except for those physical devices which you need, like laptops, desktops, that is there. And of course, printers also, you can't have the printers on the cloud. So you have that also on premise. Rest, every single bit of application is on the cloud. Backups, Backups are happening on the cloud. By the way, all the backups are happening on the cloud automatically. And the system is such that if there is a problem, any problem anywhere in any location, we will restore the backup at a different location. Okay. Let's say there's a big earthquake happening at a particular location. So those people will be relocated to a different location, or, something has to be done. So we will say, fine, set up a PC at a different location and we'll restore that particular data at a different location. So what you're seeing here is cloud changes everything. You have to use your imagination. And our customers in SMB space, the one good advantage of SMB space is we are not the sellers in SMB space. SMB customers look at people like us as consultants, because for them, we are the source of information. So they just come to us with their problem. They say, I have this problem, give me a solution. And we give them a solution. So that's how it is. And almost every single piece of your operation is today on the cloud. And I don't see that situation changing. As it was mentioned by my colleague some time back, that we are looking at a hybrid environment today. So in a hybrid environment, what is going to happen? We are not going to have a situation where everybody goes back to that place called office. Okay? No, that's not going to happen. People are going to work from anywhere and everywhere. We have done that. And we are encouraging our customers to do that. We are Mumbai-based company, but today we have got employees in Gurgaon, Raipur, Jaipur. Yeah, it does not matter. So you just have to keep in mind that cloud is a fundamental change. And believe me, if one thing pandemic has done, it has made every single company, big or small, aware that they have to undergo digital transformation. Otherwise, it's a matter of survival. Plain and simple. And digital transformation, the single biggest weapon, single biggest tool, I'll not call a weapon. Weapon has got its own negative connotations. So I'll say tool. The single biggest tool for business transformation is cloud computing. There is absolutely no other way you can do that. Okay, let me make a prediction. In a few years from now, for a smaller companies, private cloud will not be the option. Plain and simple. For a very simple reason, smaller manufacturers, for that matter, SMB segment per se, private cloud is a fairly complex affair. Okay, setting up a private cloud is not very easy. And again, we go back to that earlier discussion about resources availability. Now coming to the question of security. Look, a small manufacturer should keep this in mind, that the infrastructure which he is going to be using for himself on a public cloud provider, same infrastructure is used by people like Glaxo and Coca-Cola. Okay, which means that the infrastructure has to be good enough and compliant enough and satisfy all the possible compliances of the world and more to ensure that their data remains safe. So, and it's the same infrastructure which small guys are using. It is by far much better today to use a public cloud than a private. Yes, there will be some areas which are there where hybrid will be there, but pure private, no, I'm willing to bet one pizza on that. It's not going to happen for sure.